Several years ago, I interviewed for a communications director position with an interview board that was comprised of all of the police command staff and the fire chiefs and the captains and the EMS personnel. There was about 20 people in this board. And during the interview, the police chief asked me which I found harder to dispatch, police or fire. And I told him that fire was definitely harder to dispatch. And I don't think that was the answer that he was expecting, because the police chief said, "Really? Why is that?" And I explained to him that when a call came in for police, the call was in a beat. There was an officer working the beat. And so you sent that officer. If he was busy and it was a higher priority call, then you just sent the guy from the next beat. But with the fire department, if the caller said, "This is on fire," then you send this unit and this unit. But if the caller added this piece of information, then you sent this other unit instead. But if the caller was standing on his left leg and holding the phone in his right hand, then you scrapped all of that and you sent these other 3 units instead. And the fire chief said it sounded like I had their dispatch policy memorized already, which, yeah, pretty much. So let me ask you, I want to do a poll here. I want to know, if you dispatch both police and fire, which do you think is harder to dispatch? Wow. Fire, fire, fire. Okay. Wow, this is amazing. Okay, I got a couple that think police is harder. Okay. So most of us think fire. That's very interesting. I'm so glad to know I'm not alone. Okay. So what we're going to do today, after our lesson today, you're going to be able to state your basic fire department organization. You're going to identify the various apparatus and their functions. You're going to list the staffing needed for the various apparatus. And then we're going to state the meaning of terminology that's used on the scene. Okay, so let's start with fire department organization. Why is it considered an organization, and what is the significance of that? Well, an organization is a group of people who are working together to reach the same goal. So regardless of what that goal is, there are 3 elements to an organization. You've got structure, you've got process, and you've got behavior. So there has to be an identifiable structure in any organization that allows all members to be productive. A fire department is considered a scalar organization, meaning that orders are issued at the top and they travel down through the chain of command. And this is the unity of command concept. Now, the unity of command concept is important because it helps to keep confusion at bay when they're working calls. The concept is that each member of the organization should receive their orders from and report to a single individual. And when this process isn't followed and members start receiving orders from multiple people, that's when you start getting a lot of confusion, and that's when accidents happen. So this is one reason that all responders, including communications personnel, are required to attend FEMA training for incident command. Now, this concept needs to be so ingrained to all responders that it is automatically followed on all calls. So the org chart is not just to show who works in the department, but it's also there to allow for the unity of command to be followed. Now, there are as many iterations of the organizational charts as there are fire departments. This org chart here is an example of a kind of a small to medium sized department. And, obviously small departments don't have as many positions to track as large departments. So their org charts are going to be much simpler to read. But regardless of how small the department is, there's still going to be a chain of command. There's still going to be an org chart. Even in a volunteer department, you're going to have a chain of command and an org chart. Now, this org chart, as you can see, is pretty extensive. This is a much larger city with obviously a lot more money to fund the various positions in the department, including some that you may not have heard of, such as water department liaison. So why does the fire department organization even matter to us? Shouldn't they be following their chain of command and telling us where they're going and what they're doing? Well, not necessarily, because depending on the type of call that they're responding to, you may have to dispatch more than just the basic apparatus. You may have to call out others from admin, from equipment and supplies, employee health, or even maybe the water department liaison. So knowing your department's organization is essential to being able to send the appropriate response to an incident. Now, once you've learned your fire department's chain of command, you need to know exactly what equipment they have and how it's used. So we're going to go over most of the apparatus that's available and those most commonly used in the various fire departments. Now, not every department uses each piece of equipment. Many equipment purchases by departments are dictated by which area of the country the department is in, and also what types of calls they receive. Not every piece of equipment is called by its equipment type in every department. For instance, a fire department may have an engine, but they call it truck one. Another department may have a quint, but they call it ladder 6. So either way, you need to know what that piece of equipment can do on the scene of a fire. So in the fire engines, there are different types. The type 1 fire engine is the most common type that's used today. They're designed to carry all of the NFPA, the National Fire Protection Agency, firefighting equipment. They have a pump with a minimum tank size of 300 gallons, although most of them will have closer to a 400 or 500 gallon water tank. They also have to have a minimum of 1,000 gallons per minute of water transfer. Now, per standards, they're going to be equipped with 2.5 and 1.5 inch thick hoses of different lengths. Although some departments will change out the 1.5 to 1 3/4 inch. And by thickness, that actually refers to the diameter inside the hose through which the water is going to travel. They'll also have the tools needed at a fire, such as ground ladders, nozzles, forcible entry equipment, and first aid equipment. They may carry the SCBAs, the self-contained breathing apparatus. They may carry chainsaws, hazmat equipment, and even ballistic gear. But a lot of this is going to be determined by the size of the agency and the level of service that they provide. So type 1 engines are usually going to be first on scene. because they support firefighting and emergency medical response. But if your department doesn't provide emergency medical response, then the engine may not be equipped with any kind of first aid equipment. And then this Type 1 engine here is designed to carry 3 to 4 firefighters. Then you have a Type 2 engine, and this one is, it's a little bit more versatile piece of equipment, but it has a lot of the same specifications as the Type 1 engine. So this one is generally used as a first responder on the scene of accidents or a rescue response. You can see here that they're more compact than a rescue engine, but they can be used in the same way. So they're perfect for being, the first responder on scene to start fire extinguishing tasks as the bigger units arrive. And so just like Type 1 engines, they carry a lot of the basic firefighting gear and tools, such as the SCBAs, the circular saws, and other specialized equipment. And they are also designed to carry 3 to 4 firefighters. Now, Type 3, you'll often hear this referred to as a wildland fire truck because it is mostly used in rural and wildland areas because of its design. They're built on a 4x4 chassis, and they're built to maneuver off-road. They carry a minimum 500-gallon tank and can pump a minimum of 150 gallons per minute. And they're designed to carry at least 3 passengers. Now, in addition to the water tank, the Type 3 may also have what they call a power takeoff pump, and that allows firefighters to follow along with the truck. As the truck is driving, they can follow along, spraying water, creating fire lines, and then wetting down areas in advance of a wildfire. California uses a lot of Type 3 engines in addition to Type 6. Now, the Type 4 is very similar to Type 3, but it has a larger water tank and reduced hose capacity requirements. It's also used in wildland firefighting, and again, they're built with a 4-wheel drive chassis, but they only carry 2 people. And then you have your Types 5, 6, and 7, and they all have similar designs, so they're grouped together. And the main difference between them is the gross vehicle weight rating. They're generally used for outside fires or to provide water suppression until the larger rigs get on scene. And these may be called mini pumpers or brush trucks. So, and they too only hold 2 personnel. And this is the one that that you'll see the most of for the brush trucks. Now, I know that in Texas, the Forest Service put out a bunch of the Type 6s because they're more maneuverable and more cost effective. Read that as cheaper. Okay, next we have the Quint. A Quint is a piece of equipment that combines a ladder truck and the pumping ability of an engine. And it has to have 5 main tools to carry out firefighting functions. 5 tools, hence the name Quint. It has to have a pump, a fire pump with at least 1,000 gallons per minute capacity, a water tank that can hold at least 300 gallons, a fire hose. It has to have a hose storage area with at least 30 cubic feet of storage that's able to accommodate a fire hose 2.5 inches or larger. Plus, it has to have two areas, each a minimum of 3.5 cubic feet to accommodate the 1.5 inch or larger pre-connected hose. Has to have an aerial device, whether that's an aerial ladder or an elevated platform that has a permanent waterway. And 85 feet or more of ground ladders. And that has to include at least 2 extension ladders, 1 straight ladder equipped with roof hooks, and 1 attic ladder. Now, in addition to all of that, they also have to have at least 40 cubic feet of enclosed compartment storage. And it has to have a suction hose, including a minimum of 15 feet of soft suction hose or 20 feet of hard suction hose for drafting water. Now, because of the size of the Quint and the many firefighting activities that it can do, every department may want one, but not every department will have one. Smaller departments, with mostly single-story buildings may not necessarily need an aerial, whereas every large city is going to have several of them. And even though they combine a ladder and a pumper, that doesn't necessarily mean that a department can do all of their firefighting with that one apparatus. Because the Quint provides 5 functions, there need to be enough personnel on board to perform those 5 functions. So if the Quint is properly staffed, there will be 6 personnel on board. But we all know what budgets are. So most departments will only staff a Quint at, 3 or 4 firefighters. And then, not to mention, each person on a Quint has to be cross-trained in both engine and ladder company functions, which is another cost for the department. Now, in the equipment roster, a Quint may actually be called a Quint, or it may be called an aerial. Your department may call it a ladder truck or a rescue or a squad. It's different by departments, and it's different by areas of the country. Now, trucks are similar to Quints, except they don't have a pump and they don't carry hose, supposedly. Although that's a little bit of a misnomer because they may have a small booster tank and a booster for putting out small fires like trash fires. But they're not going to have the gallons per minute that an engine would have to put out a large fire. So the primary function of a truck is search and rescue, forcible entry, and ventilation. They carry more ground ladders, whereas, sometimes a Quint may sacrifice ground ladders if needed. But trucks will also have extra cribbing, which are the blocks that are used to shore up, maybe a vehicle in an accident scene or part of a building that may be leaning or collapsing, things like that. So they'll have extra cribbing. They'll have rescue tools like jaws and the spreaders. They'll carry the larger PPV fans, which is the positive pressure ventilation fans. And those are the fans that are used to ventilate a building during a structure fire. And they may carry a compressed air foam system for delivering fire retardant. Now, I have to say, I think this truck is pretty darn impressive. That's a fairly new truck, and I think that's pretty cool looking. Okay. Something else about the truck is that true truck companies will usually be found in larger cities and generally shouldn't be staffed with any less than 4 firefighters. The truck may also be called a ladder a tower, a platform, or a bucket. Again, depending on the department. So now, before we talk about the rescue trucks, we first need to know what a technical rescue is. So a technical rescue is the use of specialized tools and skills for rescue. It includes vehicle extrication, confined space rescue, rope rescue, trench rescue, structural collapse rescue, water rescue, and wilderness search and rescue. So these are often require specialized rescue squads because they exceed the capabilities of conventional fire departments or EMS. Now, a rescue is designed to transport and provide the equipment that's necessary for a technical rescue. And they come in different configurations, including a walk-in, a non-walk-in, roll-up doors, shelving, etc. They usually don't carry water, but they may carry shoring and stabilizing equipment. They'll have above and below ground rescue equipment, hazmat, and of course, Dawn dishwashing detergent. And if you've heard my story about the chicken fat, then you'll know what I mean. Now, a rescue might be a first responder. Generally around the Gulf Coast, they are where the refineries are because of the potential for a hazmat incident. Okay, now we talked earlier about the different types of engines, and I mentioned that several of them were used for outside fires. And these engines are often called brush trucks or boosters, and they come in more than just the engine types I showed you earlier. They're specialized support vehicles, and they're staffed generally by a crew from another apparatus. So on the picture here, you'll notice the one on the left kind of resembles a milk truck. Well, there are some smaller departments that will utilize retired milk trucks as boosters because of the capability that they have of carrying large amounts of water. Okay, we're all pretty much familiar with ambulances, but not all ambulances are created equal. Some departments provide advanced life support services to their citizens, while others may only provide basic life support and or transport. Now, you can't tell the difference from looking at the outside of the unit, but on the inside, there is a big difference. Now, a BLS unit is staffed by EMTs, and BLS, is basic life support. And so a BLS unit just provides basic life support for patients who may have, lower extremity fractures or some other medical problem without any priority symptoms. They may need transport to an acute care facility, or they may be getting discharged to home care. So on a BLS unit, the personnel are not allowed to perform any measures that include breaking the skin or any other type of advanced procedure. Now, for those departments that do provide emergency medical services, they're going to have the mobile intensive care units, or the MICUs. And these are transport units that carry devices such as cardiac monitor, blood glucose monitoring equipment. They carry medication per protocol by the medical director who oversees the program. They'll have oxygen equipment, IV fluids, and other patient care equipment. Now, they're staffed by paramedics and they're allowed to start IVs, administer medication, give injections, and then monitor patients while they're en route to a trauma center or other medical facility. So, because of these capabilities, not only are the units stocked differently, but they have different configurations on the inside to facilitate these tasks. So, depending on the department, this unit may be called a medic, they may call it an ambulance, they may call it a rescue, or they may call it a box. Again, depending on where in the country you are and which TV show you're watching. Now, a hose tender can be a couple of different types of equipment. Some of them, as you see here, literally just carry extra hose to the scene of a fire. So in a working commercial fire, you may hear command ask for a crew to bring the hose tender to the scene because they need extra line, or because someone ran over a fully charged hose and tore it, and they need to replace that to get more water on the fire. Some hose tenders will actually carry extra hose on a reel, and they'll have a tank with a small amount of water available. Then you've got a water tender, which specializes in transporting water from a water source to a fire scene. And a water tender is capable of drafting water from a stream, a lake, or a hydrant, but it doesn't have enough pumping capacity to power large hoses like an engine does. So it utilizes a smaller pump to draft the water, and it's used when there isn't a hydrant within reach of other fire equipment. Now, several years ago, I was going over fire department equipment with one of my dispatchers, and when we got to talking about the water tender, she told me that she never knew the water tender was a piece of equipment. She had always thought it was someone who stood by the engine and tended to the water. So that's, a reason that you need to know what equipment your agency has and how they utilize it, just to make sure that you're understanding what you're dispatching when you're sending it out. Now, I've loaded this video. It's long, and I'm going to kind of slide through it. But this is the ultimate hose tender. So I'm going to show you just a little bit of it so that you can see it. It plays music, but I don't know if you'll be able to hear that or not. But I'm going to play a little bit of this for you. And obviously this is not here. Okay. I wanted y'all to see that because I think that is just pretty darn cool. I just happened to find that on YouTube. So that's literally the ultimate, you know, hose tender and water tender. Oops. Okay. So now let's talk about the command vehicles. There are as many types of command vehicles as there are fire apparatus. And you'll see everything from trucks with campers on the back to 18-wheelers with trailers. The command vehicles, just like everything else, are all built to a department's specifications for their particular needs. There is no one size fits all, whether it's in the fire apparatus or the command vehicles or anything else. There is no one size fits all. So command vehicles will be set up with a command board to track incident resources. But some command vehicles, they're all run differently. So some are run from the rear of the vehicle, while others may be run from actually inside the vehicle. And I have a lot of pictures here of Cedar Hill Fire, and that's just because my little brother was fire chief there, so I was able to steal pictures from him. Now, we've gone over the most common types of apparatus. So let's talk about some fire department terminology. And just as in any other service, there are terms that are used to declare certain conditions, emergencies, and tasks. And part of fire dispatching is knowing these terms and what they mean, because a certain term shouted over the radio may mean an action is required on your part. So we're going to start with the operating mode terms. Now, when offensive is declared, it means that they're doing a rapid, aggressive interior attack on the seat of the fire. Firefighters are inside and it's a dangerous situation. Now, you may hear offensive, you may also hear attack. So that's when they are attacking the fire. Now, defensive, when defensive is declared, all the firefighters are on the outside because conditions inside are too dangerous. This could be because the fire is too involved. There's a possibility of collapse, or there may even be signs of a backdraft. So incident command has made the decision that conditions are too dangerous. Now on fire ground, we're going to have some different terminology, like hot zone. And the hot zone is the area immediately surrounding a dangerous zone. And the hot zone is restricted. You may have the warm zone, which is the area surrounding the hot zone, and less protection is required in that area. And then the cold zone is the area outside of the hazard area, and that's where you're going to find command post, is in the cold zone. Now, we know that command is the person in charge at the incident. Staged means they're standing by at a designated location. We have PAR, which is Personnel Accountability Report, and this is their roll call that they do to keep track of personnel. Now, this is usually done manually on a board, but it's done differently by different departments. But that's, for the most part, most agencies are still doing it manually because they don't all want to rely on technology to keep track of everything. Then you have your primary search, which is going to be the initial search of a structure to clear out any civilians or anything in there that needs to be cleared out. You're going to have your interior, which is going to be your crew that's operating inside. And they're going to be numbered. So if you have more than one person inside, you're going to have interior 1, interior 2. They may be interior 1 or interior 2. Sometimes they'll be called by a unit number, such as they may be on the truck and they may be the first unit on the truck. So they may be truck A or truck 1, truck A1, truck A2, truck B1, truck B2. There's all kinds of different numbers that are used for the people on the interior, for the firefighters. So that's something that you would need to know from your department what those exact identifiers are. The ventilation crew is the crew that's assigned to handle the ventilation. And so whether that's, they may be cutting a hole in the roof, they may be cutting a hole in the wall and setting up the PPV fans. It's whatever they have to do the ventilation. And then of course your search is your crew assigned to perform primary or secondary search. So they do the primary search initially, and then they do any kind of rescue. If they don't find anybody, then they do firefighting, and then they go back in and they'll do a secondary search to make sure that nothing was missed. Then you have your RIT, and your RIT is a crew assigned to a ready position to perform a rescue. Now, they may be called Rapid Intervention Crew or RIC team. They may be RIT, Rapid Intervention Team. It totally depends on the department, but they are there strictly to rapidly intervene if another firefighter gets in trouble. So basically, they're the firefighter rescue team. And then the roof crew, they're assigned to the roof, whether they're ventilating or they're searching for an extension of the fire or they're checking conditions, whatever it is that they're needing to do on the roof. Now, we have some emergency terminology. Most of us are pretty familiar with this. I mean, everybody knows Mayday. It's recognizable. It's a firefighter in distress, and it'll be used by lost, trapped, or injured firefighters to report their status as being in trouble. Now, in addition to calling Mayday, a lot of firefighters will have alarms on in their equipment that if it doesn't detect movement for 30 seconds, it starts setting off a real high-pitched whistle. And that's another way to let command or other firefighters know that there is a firefighter in trouble. Evacuate is an order to immediately evacuate a structure and or a toxic atmosphere, and it's going to be issued by the incident commander. And then emergency traffic is used for other emergency communications that needs immediate attention. So it may be there's an immediate need for rescue. There may be wires down. The building is maybe collapsing. It's in danger of collapsing, or the fire is behaving in a very unpredictable way. So these are terms that you may hear from the fire department as they're fighting a fire. And if your department uses other terms, again, you need to know what those other terms are that they're going to be using. Now, once crews are on the scene of a fire, responders and other crews should not communicate directly with dispatch after arriving on scene. All communications should go through command and should be on the assigned channel. And it should be command talking to the units and command talking to dispatch. And this is done to keep down the confusion, to keep fire from getting different orders or different information, and keep communications from getting different orders or different information. So that's how it should be done, always through command. Now, as far as your apparatus statuses, you've got in quarters, which means they're in their station. They're available on the radio. They're out of their station, but they're available for a call. They're on scene. We all know they're there on scene. And then out of service means they are unable to respond, period. Now, if they're training, they're assigned to training, but depending on the type of training that's being done, it may or may not be an out of service code. So if needed, apparatus at training may be assigned to a call, or they may be asked to return to the station. Inspecting hydrants and doing pre-plans and building inspections and things like that, when they're doing things like that, they're still available for a call. So automatic versus mutual aid. There is a difference between automatic aid and mutual aid. With automatic aid, there's an agreement between two departments to provide coverage to certain areas. So that may be no man's land that overlaps, say, both city limits or county lines, or it may be an industrial area that's encompassing an area in both departments' coverage areas. Mutual aid is an agreement to provide assistance when sources are depleted due to working incidents. So a department may have mutual aid agreements with more than one department if there's a specific hazard in their response area. So for instance, if there's a chemical plant in a department's response area, they may have mutual aid agreements with several nearby towns and cities to cover not only the firefighting activities, but also to fill the empty stations for other responses. Now, in the case of mutual aid, the on-scene incident commander will determine what resources are needed, and they will make requests for additional equipment. So when you're contacting the mutual aid department, information about the location of the incident, the location of command, staging information, radio channels being used, and possibly map grids are going to need to be provided. So these are things that you're going to have to know when you're calling out for mutual aid. Now, what can you do? So you can see that there are a ton of variations in the fire service, whether that's from equipment to terminology, and there is no one size fits all. So what does this mean for you, and what can you do about it? Well, if fire dispatching is your second language, then you need to take a language class. The first thing I suggest is that you get with your fire department and you arrange to spend a day with them. Now, if your agency doesn't pay overtime for you to train, then do it on your own time. Consider it investing in your future. Spend the day with your fire department and find out exactly what equipment they have and what are the capabilities of each of those pieces of equipment. Now, we've discussed the different engines and trucks and aerials, but every department has their equipment built to their specifications. So there won't be any two pieces of equipment out there exactly alike. And that's why you need to know what your department has. Having an understanding of what each piece of equipment does and what they can do helps you when you're dispatching a call and trying to decide what to send. Now, I know that, most of us have CAD systems and they tell us who to send, but the CAD system isn't always right. And that's why we actually have to think when sending the apparatus. And that's why dispatching fire is so much harder, for me anyway. So go to your fire department, and while you're there, try on the equipment that the firefighters have to wear while they're fighting fires. Put on the helmet, put on the SCBA, get someone in communications to talk to you over the radio so that you can hear what the firefighters actually hear. You'll find that it's not as easy to understand what's coming over the radio as you think. And then something else that you can do, a lot of departments are starting to run what's called the Blue Card Incident Command System. And it's a set of standards that has been developed to try to get all departments on a more standardized incident command system, because there are so many variations from different departments to how they utilize the ICS system. So find out if your department is running the Blue Card Incident Command System, and then go to training with them to get an understanding of it. The point of all of this is for you to be effective at your job, you've got to understand their job. And so not only that, but in addition, you should teach them your job so they understand what's coming from your end also. At the last agency that I worked for, we actually had firefighters come in and we trained them to answer the phone, and we taught them how to take the calls, and we had some that did really well. We had some that came in and spent a couple of days and then never showed up again. So it was an eye-opening experience for them. just as if you go to the fire department and you put on their equipment and you walk all around and you learn what equipment they have, it's going to be an eye-opening experience for you. So definitely do your part to learn what you can about this. Now, before we get to questions, I want to remind you to tune in next month, same bat time, same bat channel, Wednesday, April 6th at noon Central Time for our next webinar, which is actually going to be a roundtable discussion. Navigating career changes in 911, and we will discuss the different options open to those who want to move forward in their careers, but keep it in 911. So we'll have some guest speakers, Tony Dunn with Motorola Solutions, Mary Boyd with Intrado, and Lisa Dodson with Motorola Solutions. So if you've ever said to yourself, I don't want to be a dispatcher all my life, then come join us to see what opportunities are available to you and what you can do to plan for those opportunities. Now, if you have questions, go ahead and send those in. I'll answer anything that I can. In the meantime, I want to remind you that if you need a certificate for today's lesson for continuing education, send an email to training@comelectronics.com. Thank you for joining us. This presentation has been made possible by Commercial Electronics, provider of public safety solutions, including Higher Ground, NG 911 recording, Live 911, and CQIP third-party quality assurance program. Have a great day. And like I said, I will leave this up for a few minutes in case you have any questions. Just send those in and I will answer those. Thank you for joining us.